We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot, season number 4, episode number 18. And man, we are here at the weekend, man. And first and foremost, man, I just want to send out the special prayers out to the people out in Los Angeles area, Pacific Palisades area, man, dealing with the wildfires out there. Just watching the news coverage of that over the last couple of days has just been wild and crazy, to say the least. A lot of people have been displaced. A lot of people have lost their homes. So we're going to start off the show on that note, as well as we've had some crazy weather in the southern part of the United States with snow in certain areas that usually don't get snow. So I hope you guys are definitely safe wherever you're listening to this podcast at. And man, I am stoked, man. We got the NFL playoffs jumping off this weekend. Can't wait for that. We got the Saturday slate of games. We got the Sunday slate of games. I'm definitely going to get into the whole look across the National Football League. And man, we got a special guest falling through, man. Isalim is from the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast, falling through. Definitely give his insights, just going to kind of give you guys a recap of our convo that we had. We took a look at a couple of the games in the playoffs on the NFL side, and we also dove into the college football playoffs. Congratulations to Notre Dame making the national championship game. There's a game going on right now between Texas and Ohio State to figure out who they will be facing in the national championship. And as I mentioned, we're going to dive into the NFL, to the CFP. Another breaking news come across the desk. We had Deshaun Watson, man. It looks like he tore his ACL again. And I'm not talking about during the season when he got carted off the field, unfortunately. But after surgery, ruptured again. Looks like this might be the beginning of the end for Deshaun Watson, man. Just very, very unfortunate. Just for him as a person. He obviously had some issues off the field. We're not going to get into that. But it's definitely a situation that the Cleveland Browns, without question, has buyer remorse. I think we may have seen Deshaun Watson for the final time as an NFL football player getting carried off a stretcher in the game for the Cleveland Browns earlier this season. We've got some coaching openings. And, the coaching search is going across the NFL, various teams, whether it be, my Chicago Bears, whether it be the New Orleans Saints, whether it be the Las Vegas Raiders. So there's a lot of job openings out here. Some teams looking for GM spots as well. And so we got a nice little slate, man. Like I said, I got a special guest coming through, man. I'm just going to give you guys a little snippet of that NFL conversation that we had about the playoffs, as we took a look at 2 matchups in the NFC and also 2 thoughts on the college football playoff, man. We're going to get into that. So, like I said, man, I hope you guys are safe and comfortable doing this nice little winter stretch as we gear into the playoffs on both sides. Also, too, can't forget about the NBA. It's a big matchup between the best team with the 2 best records in the league, Oklahoma City and Cleveland Cavaliers, and it was a good game as Cleveland was able to knock them off in Cleveland. A lot of people feel that may be an NBA Finals preview. I'm not sure. They're 2 young ball clubs, man. Shout out to Kenny Atkinson and the job he's done out there in Cleveland. Oklahoma City, they rolling too. And like I said, it could be a playoff preview. We'll see. Interesting thing across the NBA, man, it's like the youngest looks like they taking over the NBA. And so I appreciate it, man. If it's your first time listening, we provide high-five takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And if you're an OG of the show, man, I appreciate the check-in. Coming up, we're going to get into the rest of the show. We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. Welcome back. And the National Football League, the playoffs is here. It's definitely the favorite time of the season across the NFL. And it's been an interesting season. Definitely the regular season had its highs and lows across the board. there definitely was some crash and burns across the National Football League, as you know, we've seen the firings of coaches as we gear up for the playoffs. And to me, you know, there's been a lot of interesting things, and for me, it's just remembering the teams that didn't make the playoffs that high expectations coming into the season. One of those come across the mind, man, is the New York Jets. They brought Aaron Rodgers coming in, really his first official season with the Jets. You know, after his first year ended in injury. And boy, was it a crash and burn. They had the opportunity to bring in Devontae Adams during the season. You know, obviously they fired Robert Saleh during the season. Didn't bring back the GM across the board for the New York Jets, and it's just been a crash and burn situation. So, you know, there's one team that comes to mind. Another team that comes to mind that, to me, they could have easily won their division and definitely been sent in the playoffs right now, man, and that's the Atlanta Falcons, man. Raheem Morris in the decision-making process, man, and just down the stretch, the Atlanta Falcons just couldn't hold on, man, as they fall short. Lose the division once again to the Tampa Bay Bucks as Baker Mayfield and company mosey on into the playoffs. Also, too, man, I can't forget about my Chicago Bears. This season coming in, man, we had very high hopes. Caleb Williams, the number 1 pick overall in the draft from USC. You know, Ryan Poles cooking up a cake up in Chicago. You know, it was a high hopes for the organization across the board. We made, you know, our situation with Hard Knocks, which I was waiting 20 years for Hard Knocks to come across the board for my Chicago Bears. Got a chance to see what's going on, and we had Matt Eberflus being the MC of the operations. Right now he's unemployed. Chicago Bears asked permission from the Dallas Cowboys to bring in Mike McCarthy for an interview, and so things are looking dreadful for my Chicago Bears, man, as we had high hopes this season. Can't forget to mention the Cincinnati Bengals. You know, this was an interesting team across the board. I mean, a team that had the Triple Crown winner, man, and Jamar Chase, and congratulations to him. Go ahead and back up the Brinks truck for Jamar Chase this summer. Joe Burrow, man, looking like the best quarterback in football for various weeks throughout the season. Had an outstanding year. Led the league in touchdowns as well as passing yardage. And this team fell up short again. And Zach Taylor, you know, they fired the defensive coordinator. And I think that Zach Taylor was the guy that should have been shown the door. You know, I just think that this whole situation in Cincinnati, man, could have been avoided. You know, I just think about the early losses in the regular season, the Buffalo and Baltimore, and, you know, obviously the situation with the Kansas City Chiefs. And so those are 3 games right there. They win one of those games, man, they make it to the playoffs, man. And that's how short it is in the National Football League, man, to get in where you fit in. And with that being said, man, we're going to take a look at the playoff slate starting in the AFC. As I mentioned, the Kansas City Chiefs, hard-earned bye for them with 2 losses on the season, man, as they get in pole position to try to make a run and win a 3rd straight Super Bowl. Never been done in NFL history. And one slate and one game that I was taking a look at, man, that's come across the board on Saturday in the wild card round, man, we got the Houston Texans taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh has done a great job with this organization, man, setting the table set. You know, there's a lot of questions with them losing Austin Eckler and Mike Williams. And, you know, it's just a situation where this team definitely was rebuilding. Keenan Allen, obviously going up to Chicago, and just didn't know what to expect from this team. And Jim Harbaugh, man, went back to the old school formula, man. Run the football, play good defense. You got a quarterback that's able to make those throws when you need them during the football game. And they mosey their way on into the playoffs, man. The Houston Texans, on the other hand, this team has backed themselves into the playoffs. You know, I think this team plays in the weakest division in the National Football League in the AFC South. They definitely benefited from that because they haven't been playing their best football, man, the last 6 weeks of the season. C.J. Stroud, you know, he's came back down to earth. A lot of people say sophomore slump, and I believe so. When you look at the totality of what he's been able to do so far this season. Now, obviously, it was a whole situation with the offensive line. You know, you had injuries, Tank Dell, you know, being out for the season. Nico Collins was a little nicked up during the beginning of the year. You know, Will Anderson being out on the defensive side. So this team, you know, they've been a little banged up. I'm going to keep it all the way 100 down there in Houston. But This matchup coming up on Saturday, man, I think it's probably, to me, one of the most exciting matchups, low-key. And the reason I say that, man, is these are two teams that are young and very hungry, man, to kind of get them some stake in the AFC, which is, as we know, man, very, very competitive across the board. And so, to me, this is a coming-of-age game, man. That's the thing for me in this football game. I think that at the end of the day, the Houston Texans have more firepower on the offensive side, but I think the Chargers have a better defense. I think Houston's defense has been kind of mediocre this season. They've had their, games where they got loose, but overall, as a collective, they've been a little bit mediocre this season. And so, to me, this is a pick 'em, man. I mean, you got, the spread on this one is 2.5 points, man. To me, that's a field goal football game. And I just feel that at the end of the day, it comes down to coaching. DeMeco Ryans has done an outstanding job down there in Houston. But I just think that Jim got a trick up his sleeve. And I got a feeling that the Chargers win this game. I think it's going to come down to the end. I think C.J. Stroud is going to play some good football in this football game. I think he's going to be C.J. Stroud. But I just think that the Chargers, man, they're going to make just enough plays and be able to run the football just enough to ink by the Houston Texans. I got the Chargers moving on in this game. And then we stick in the AFC, man. And this is one of them traditional AFC North matchups, man. Black and blue division of the National Football League, as we got the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The whole thing about the Baltimore Ravens, this is a team that I predicted to go to the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year. You got the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson now, and we got the whole George Pickens fiasco coming back off injury, being, another malcontent situation for him. I think that Pittsburgh, they're still, good on defense, one of the best defensive units in the National Football League. I just think that Mike Tomlin obviously is, one of the best coaches in the National Football League, but this offense is inept. And I think that Baltimore on the defensive side has been the Achilles heel all season, but they finally playing some good football on the defensive side. And that's what I've been waiting for Baltimore. And I think at the end of the day, they're not going to reach their zenith until that defensive unit, man, plays like the talent level they own. Obviously, if you're a fan of the show, you already know that I feel that the talent in Baltimore can stack up across the board just about with any defense in the National Football League. But they got a new defensive coordinator. He's had his ups and downs so far this season, but this unit is playing, reasonably well towards the back end of the year. Lamar Jackson, he had his ups and downs in the playoffs so far in his career. It's definitely not automatic in this football game. And I think that, to me, they would rather play either the Texans or the Chargers if it was the Ravens. I think that's the last thing they want to see is the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they know it's going to be, one of them, division backyard type of football games. But I think that this Baltimore Ravens team is different. And I think the balance is with Derrick Henry. I can't wait to see that matchup with him and the defensive line, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that matchup, it's definitely going to be a situation from the Steelers standpoint because the offense is inept. They definitely can't turn over the football in this football game. I think Lamar Jackson is special. He makes enough special plays to keep this team moving on along. Zay Flowers, word on the street, he may play in this football game. He got nicked up last week. And so I got the Ravens moving on in this football game, man. They're a 10-point favorite. I think that the Steelers keep it a little bit closer than that 10-point spread. But I think the Baltimore Ravens do move on. There could be a chance this thing could get out of hand. But I just think that Mike Tomlin is good enough of a coach, man, to muck the game up a little bit and try to at least keep Pittsburgh competitive throughout this one. But I got the Baltimore Ravens moving on. Then we got the Buffalo Bills, man, and Josh Allen, who I'm endorsing to be the MVP this season. I think this is one of the best MVP races, by the way, that I've seen in a long time. Whether it's Saquon Barkley, whether it's Lamar Jackson, there's definitely been some worthy candidates. But I just think that Josh Allen, man, has put on the cape pretty much all season long, man. This guy's just outstanding. It was a question mark, obviously, coming into the season with their offensive weaponry. But, he's just been chugging on along. Now, this is a tough matchup to me because of the defense on the side with the Broncos, man. And I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. We on Five Sports Podcast, The Spot. We got high-five takes and analysis across the sport landscape. That's how we get down, and we got to keep it 100, man. I've given Sean Payton a very hard time, man, in his tenure in Denver. but the man has proven me wrong this season. One, drafting Bo Nix, and Bo Nix being a valuable commodity for this football club. And secondly, they've had the defensive pieces the last couple of years, but this year they've finally been able to link everything up as need be, and they playing some good football, man. This to me could be a potential upset special. Yeah, this could potentially be an upset special for me. I think that Josh Allen, man, I just think that he's been outstanding. But, I think he needs some contributions from James Cook. I think this needs to be kind of a team effort to be able to knock off the Denver Broncos, man. This game is basically a touchdown point spread of about almost 9 points, 8.5 points on the point spread. I think this game is a lot closer than that. But I got the Buffalo Bills chugging along, man. This game is probably going to be the most exciting game on the AFC side. Probably in the playoffs in the wild card round. We'll definitely see what it do. But, I got the Bills moving on in this football game. And like I said, the AFC, man, is definitely some heavy hitters, man. Like I said, they've been strong all year as a conference. You definitely got star power with Lamar Jackson and, just Josh Allen and, obviously Russell Wilson. And, you got C.J. Stroud and Justin Herbert. So it's a nice little slate, man, of quarterbacks, man. It's definitely going to be an intriguing watch this weekend on the AFC side. And on the NFC side, now we had the bye come down to the final game of the season between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, man. And the Detroit Lions just straight punched the Minnesota Vikings in the mouth. Sam Darnold, man, they had an opportunity to make that a competitive football game. Just couldn't make plays, man, especially in the red zone. Just couldn't make plays. And the Detroit Lions, man, Jahmyr Gibbs just ran all over this football club. Definitely this was what I call a bar fight type of game, a divisional game, and, for all the stakes for the bye. So the Detroit Lions, man, they get the bye. Obviously, they got a sour taste in their mouth since last season when they lost in the NFC Championship game to the San Francisco 49ers. Dan Campbell, man, is just a guy just about it, man. Detroit, stand up, man. What up, though? You guys have had a good football season, and it's time for that get back, man. You put yourself in pole position when you get the number one seed in the NFC. But in the wild card round, man, we got the Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay and Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford, who should be healthy in this football clip, against the aforementioned Minnesota Vikings. And to me, I think the best thing that could have happened to them last week was losing. And what I mean by that, I think this team is going to be back hungry, back focused. Obviously, Sean McVay is going to scheme up, one of the best coaches in the National Football League. Calvin Williams has had an outstanding year for them. Puka Nacua, came back from injury, bouncing back. Looks like he's, back in his rare form just a little bit. But this team has been a little nicked up during the season. With Kupp being out, Nacua being out, and he's still a little nicked up, a little iffy. And so I just think that the Minnesota Vikings, as I mentioned last week, was the best thing that could have happened to them because they got a dose of reality. And they get a chance to get that get back. Obviously, they wanted to get the bye. You definitely want to be, in that situation if you're the Minnesota Vikings. But at the end of the day, you got to go out to Los Angeles and you got to handle business. And this is what it's about for Sam Darnold. This man has been Cinderella at the ball all season long. Hopes the clock don't strike 12 with them going out to Los Angeles. And I got the Minnesota Vikings winning this game going out to Los Angeles. Minnesota's a 1.5 favorite in this football game. Obviously, I think this game is going to be close. I just think that Minnesota's just going to make enough plays, man, to get this done. Justin Jefferson, man, he got an attitude from last week. I think he's going to bounce back and have an outstanding football game. And I just see the Minnesota Vikings, man, moving on the road, man, with a sour taste in their mouth against the Los Angeles Rams. Then we got a good matchup with the Tampa Bay Bucks, Baker Mayfield and company, taking on the Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels. And I think this is going to be an exciting football game because both of these teams, one with the Commanders, man, they've changed their whole organization around, moving on. Daniel Snyder selling the football club, bringing in Josh Harris, Magic Johnson, part of that brain trust, and, Dan Quinn, getting a second opportunity to be a head coach of the National Football League. And this team has been a team of destiny, man, all season long. They've been one of the better teams in the NFL when it comes to late game situations, just pulling out a rabbit out of a hat. Jaden Daniels has been outstanding. He's definitely the rookie of the year. And Baker Mayfield always got a chip on the shoulder. Congratulations, too, by the way, to Mike Evans. Another 1,000-yard season. And I thought it was very, very classy what the organization did because he had $3 million on the line. Let that man go ahead and scoop up that loose change, man. Scoop up that money, man. Get that 1,000 yards, man. So congratulations to Mike Evans. This is going to be one of the most intriguing football games, man. And to me, this is a pick'em game. I'm going to be straight up 100. Now, Tampa is a 3-point favorite in this football game, but I think you throw that out of the window because this is probably the hardest game that I, have an insight and a prediction on, man, through all the playoff slate. I think that at the end of the day, though, I think that the experience by Tampa helps them to move on. Now, if you ask me who I pick for the future as far as a quarterback, I'm definitely going with Jaden Daniels. But I just think that Baker Mayfield, man, he's seasoned. This team won a playoff game last year against the Philadelphia Eagles in the wild card round. And so I just think they got that experience, man. And I just think that at the end of the day, in games like this, especially playing at home down in Tampa, they move on against the Washington Commanders. I think this game do go down to last couple possessions of the football game, man. But I got the Bucs moving on in this one. And then we got the final game of the slate, playoff slate. Well, not the final game, but the final game that I'm going to go ahead and speak my piece on, man, is the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Green Bay Packers. And the Eagles, they're a team that, rest up their starters. It's a whole situation with Jalen Hurts. He got the concussion, man. Looks like he may play. That's a touch and go situation. But the Packers, they backed into the playoffs. And this is a team that I'm not going to front on, man. I ain't going to call them fool's gold, but I just think they're a team that people have put them on a higher perch than what they're not necessarily supposed to be at. And, they get a nice little crack at the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, obviously, the Eagles got that situation with Jalen Hurts. But I'm going to go with the expectation that Jalen Hurts plays in this football game. Philadelphia's a 4-point favorite in this one. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles knock off the Green Bay Packers in this football game. I just think that with Jalen Hurts back and just how versatile this offense is with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and the defense playing good, been playing, across the board good so far this season. I got the Eagles moving on, man. I think they got a bad taste from their mouth last season, losing in the wild card game to the Tampa Bay Bucs. I just think that at the end of the day, they got too much firepower for the Packers. I think that Jordan Love, at the end of the day, he got to prove himself. And he's been a guy that's been kind of a loose cannon so far this season. And, obviously we got, the injury, for them with Watson. And it looks like it's a pretty bad injury. Just first and foremost, man, I hope he makes a speedy recovery. I think that's a nice little cog that they're going to need, especially in the playoff type of environment. And I got the Philadelphia Eagles moving on in this football game. And that's my look, man, across the National Football League, this playoff slate. I know you guys are geeked up to check out the games this weekend, man. And, it's definitely going to be some bad and bogus weather across the U.S., so I hope you guys are in a nice little warm, cozy spot, comfortable spot, man, checking out these football games, whether or not your team's involved or not. Definitely can't wait for it all to go down. First of all, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast Spots. And welcome back. Like we were saying, man, the Bucs taking on the Washington Commanders on the NFC side. Now the Bucs, Baker Mayfield is riding high this season. Congratulations to Mike Evans, another 1,000-yard season for him. I think the Bucs did a good job of making sure he got that 1,000 yards and also that $3 million bonus. I think that was very, very classy from the organization. And then they're taking on the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, new ownership group up in Washington. I just think that Dan Quinn on a redemption tour as well as his second tour of duty as being an NFL head coach. What you think about this Bucs and Commanders tilt, man?
Man, this is a nice matchup for me personally. I'm excited about this matchup just because you get to see the young phenom Jaden Daniels, do his thing. Just kudos to him as a rookie, man, bringing his team to the playoffs. The first season. I mean, that's unheard of. Besides, like C.J. Stroud, what he's done recently. But I mean, it seems like these new quarterbacks these days, they ready and made right away. And with McLaurin. Brian Robinson. I just like the way the Commanders are, they balance right now. And I'm just happy I'm excited that Washington's back in the playoffs, man. That's a rare situation. And then when you got the Buccaneers, I mean, you're talking about Baker Mayfield been baking all year. He's been cooking all year. Like you said, Mike Evans, 11 straight seasons at 1,000 yards. I mean, you got Bucky Irvin from Oregon doing his thing. I'm liking this matchup, but I'm favoring the Buccaneers right now because they are home. I feel like Baker Mayfield has been doing whatever he wants to do this year. I believe he was second in rushing or passing yards this year. Man, the guy been playing. People gotta put the respect on Baker Mayfield's name these days, man. This guy, and he running the ball. Like he just playing so relentless right now. He do whatever he gotta do to win games, and I feel like it's not gonna be nothing different this time around. I feel like Washington, since y'all on a roll, this y'all first time being in the playoffs. Get some experience, come back next year. But Baker them came last year. It was on the same thing. They beat Philly last year, the first round. And so I think they going to pick up where they left off with this nice home game. And then play Philly next week. Maybe. So, the Bucks I'm going with.
Yeah, man, I just think that the Tampa Bay Bucks, playing at home. I think the playoff experience from last year coming to play in this football game. Speaking of the Eagles, they beat the Eagles last year in the wild card game last season. The Tampa Bay Bucks did. And so I just think that they experience, definitely got to shout out Todd Bowles. He's done an outstanding job down in Tampa. And so I just think that their experience, I believe, to kind of play out safe for them. I think the key to the game is something that you kind of hinted to a little bit earlier is just the run games on both sides. Meaning that I think is really paramount for the Commanders because it's Jaden Daniels' first NFL playoff game. And so I just think that guys like a Brian Robinson and, can't forget about Rodriguez, who's playing some good ball when Robinson went down during the season. So I think that if the Commanders are able to run the ball a little bit, they may have a chance. But I just think that the Bucks, just with their experience, man, I'm with you on this one. I got them moving on in this football game. And speaking of the Eagles, you mentioned them a little bit earlier. The Eagles taking on the Green Bay Packers. Jalen Hurts got out of concussion protocol. Looks like he's going to be available for this football game. The Eagles, they rest their guys. Saquon Barkley getting rested. Congratulations to him for 2,000-yard season. I think that the Eagles are just balanced on both sides of the football. I think that with the Packers, with Jordan Love, I just think that they're a team that, especially with Christian Watson being out, I think they're a little bit hampered. And to me, Jordan Love, outstanding talent. I just think that he's going to make a couple mistakes on the road, and I think it's going to be costly for them. But what's your thoughts, man, on this Eagles and Packers game, man, this weekend?
For me, this is probably one of the more easier picks for me. I feel like just based on these two teams. Now, I will say I love what the Eagles been doing this year, man. They started out kind of slow, like you were saying, but Saquon Barkley, kudos to Saquon Barkley. I'm kind of upset, it's a conspiracy theory about why he didn't get those that record because they're trying to treat running backs like they want to treat running backs still. But that's a whole nother story for another day. We'll just get back to Philly. I mean, they just more fully equipped than pretty much most teams in the NFL in general. I'm liking what they've been doing. The Packers, on the other hand, they kind of limping. They lost to the Bears, even though that was a rivalry game, and they beat the Bears 11 straight times. So I really don't put too much stock in that because it was time for the Bears to go ahead and get that W. But I will say I just feel like the Eagles just have a little bit more firepower. And if you're gonna sit out Saquon Barkley to not break that record, and you're doing all this for this bye and stuff, then y'all have no other choice but to win. So I don't expect nothing else but a W from the Eagles just based on how they approached the last week of the season.
Yeah, and the pressure's on Nick Sirianni, obviously. He was in a hot situation earlier part of this year. But the Eagles overall as a collective unit, they play some good football. Can't forget about, the defensive tackle Jalen Carter. He's had an outstanding season for them on the defensive side. I think to me that was the only question mark, in my opinion, was really Philadelphia's defense. I mean, you go back to last season, their defense, was very underwhelming, man, when they went on that skid. I think this year they've kind of corrected a couple of things on the defensive side. And as you mentioned, they've been approaching it, just with a more calculated type of thing, especially going to the last week of the season. And I just think that they're just a little bit too much for the Packers at this point. And that's the NFL look across this week. We definitely going to get back at it coming up in the divisional round next week. Can't wait for that. And last night we had a classic between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Penn State Nittany Lions. Got the college football playoff, man, the semifinal round of that. Last 4 teams. This game was played down in Miami in the Orange Bowl. And, it was a very exciting game. I thought Penn State had every chance to win this football game. They quarterback, having, just miscues. And the most costly one was towards the end of this football game as Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish advanced to the national championship game. They'll take on the winner of Texas and Ohio State. That game has jumped off already, so we'll definitely see what that do on the next episode. But what was your thoughts, man, about last night, as well as your thoughts across the final 4 teams in the CFP college football playoff?
Man, I'm loving how the new CFB playoff bracket, the way they're doing things, and just the game just alone yesterday. Man, it was an incredible game in my eyes. 2 historical colleges. I'm a Big Ten guy and I'm a Notre Dame guy, so it was bittersweet. I didn't care who won, but they were just going back at it, back and forth. They scored a touchdown. Now they throw an interception. Then Penn State throw an interception. So it was kind of crazy. And both fans was just going up and down like an elevator. It was very, very emotional, man. But kudos to both teams. But kudos to Notre Dame for pulling it out at the end, man. I can't say enough about Notre Dame. That was one of those teams that I grew up watching, since the '80s. Since the Rock.
Rocket Ismail. No doubt about it. Rocket Ismail all day.
It's just good to see. It's good to see the Midwest back in the Final Four like this. Besides Texas, we ain't gonna talk about them. But at the end of the day, that was just an awesome game, man. I feel like it was a game that it was refereed the right way. It wasn't no crazy situations where a flag messed up the matter. Besides that one pass interference, but that didn't matter anyway because Notre Dame won. So great matchup, and I'm just looking forward to next week.
Yeah, and this was a team, Notre Dame, that you guys have heard it before on the show. I threw them in the trash after they lost to Northern Illinois University. And no disrespect to Northern Illinois University. Obviously, both of us are from the state of Illinois, so shout out to the Huskies up there in DeKalb. But I just threw Notre Dame in the garbage when they lost that game. And so I definitely got to send a shout out to Marcus Freeman. He's done an outstanding job. We had, these coaching vacancies, which I got into a little bit earlier in the show. And I think you may want to add Marcus Freeman's name to the list. And like I said, they move on triumphantly to the national championship game. Then we got Ohio State and Texas jumping off. And, Ohio State, in my opinion, you look at their roster, they're probably the most talented team in college football that's remaining. Texas with Quinn Ewers and the young Manning lad down there, and Steve Sarkisian, head coach of the Texas Longhorns. What's your thoughts on this game, man? Because definitely we've had the Midwest flavor: Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame in the college football playoff, and one SEC school. What's your thoughts, man, on this Ohio State and Texas jump off?
Man, it's gonna be a good matchup, man. I've been following Texas pretty much all year because obviously because of the Manning, Peyton and Eli nephew.
Oh yeah, young Arch.
Young Archie, and so I was excited about that. But then they put Ewers back in the game. I believe like the last 3-4 weeks, and that kind of threw me off with them. Even though I didn't understand that because I felt like the young phenom, was doing his thing when that happened. So I feel like that's gonna probably bite him. Even though Uriz he's a nice quarterback. You know, he's been there. He's a veteran. But they're going up against a powerhouse right now. This is pretty much the last powerhouse that's left when it comes to a team that's been relevant the last 6-7 years. You know, always going to the national championship or at least in the playoff hunt for the national championship. Ohio State, we're talking. So I'm looking at Ohio State, like you said. I feel like they're probably the most talented team that's left as far as offense and defense is concerned. And they got the young wide receiver, the young phenom wide receiver. I'm expecting this to be a game that I don't even see this game being too close like that. I'm looking at least a 10-point lead. Ohio State go ahead and get to the national championship.
Yeah, and it'd be funny. The funny thing about that is that, you know, Ohio State was another team that a lot of people threw in the trash, you know, when they lost to Michigan. You know what I mean? And, you know, obviously it's a big-time rivalry game. But I can remember correctly, I think Ohio State was close to a 14-point favorite in that football game. But since then, you know, shout out to Ryan Day. A lot of people wanted the head coach head on the stick. You know, they've been able to pick up the pieces. And, you know, if that holds serve, as you would say, because I think that Ohio State is just a little bit more talented than Texas across the board. So I got them winning this game as well. It would be interesting to see, you know, an Ohio State and a Notre Dame national championship game where most people across the country kind of threw these teams in the garbage, you know, a few weeks, you know, going back into the season. So that definitely would be an interesting thing. And man, my brother, man, I appreciate you falling through on the check-in on We On Fire the Spot. Oh yeah.
Anytime,
you know,
brother.
Yeah, man. Before you get out of here, man, you know, tell the folks, man, where you guys can be reached at, man, at the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast, man.
Man, you can find me on YouTube under Firebox 2300. Make sure you subscribe, and once you subscribe, like, subscribe, and share, comment, because we giving out good content. Great tools out here. Also, if you just need to, while you driving and, you know, going to work or whatnot, you can also catch us on Spreaker, Spreaker. Spreaker. It's the audio version. There's some soothing situations going on, man. You won't be disappointed at all. So Spreaker, YouTube is where you can find me.
Man, yeah, I definitely appreciate that check-in. And, man, I had another breaking news that came across the desk, man, and just came across the desk. We got Deshaun Watson, man. He had a setback with the ACL. We just had HCL surgery not too long ago. Looks like he's re-injured that ACL again, man. And I think that we may have seen the last of Deshaun Watson in the National Football League. We'll get into that a little bit more probably in the next episode, just from a Cleveland perspective and Deshaun's perspective, man. But it definitely was the worst news for Deshaun Watson. You know, obviously me being, you know, down here, my headquarters down in Georgia. You know, live not too far from his hometown in Gainesville, Georgia, man. So I watched Deshaun Watson as a high school player. And so, you know, definitely, you know, hope he can get back on the field if possible. But I think this is the beginning of the end for Deshaun Watson. But we'll definitely get into that. But, you know, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you guys checking in. I appreciate your ear. We On Fire Sports Podcast. The Spot.